Hey, everybody. Welcome to a special Jew and Gentile podcast. I am your host, Chris Katolka, and Steve Herzig isn't here right now. He's actually coming home from the Holy Land. We just had a great interview with him a couple days ago, but I've actually got a special guest on the line that I'm excited to introduce you to if you're watching live on YouTube right now. Her name is Abigail Leavitt. Abigail, great to see you. Oh, hold on one second. Abigail, great to see you.
Great to see you too. Can you hear me?
I can. Good to see you. I'm so glad that we could do this. Abigail and I are old acquaintances from many moons ago. And if you're looking right now live online, you can see that Abigail's actually pretty young. So, it wasn't too long ago, but I'm excited to talk about a find. Abigail is actually an archaeologist, and she has done some amazing digs, which I'm very excited for her to talk about. And recently, a very important find in Israel that she has had her hands in. But Abigail, I'm thankful that you could be with us. Could you share a little bit about how you got to where you are right now? You are a young, aspiring archaeologist in Israel. I've seen you at work, literally, I think in Jerusalem on one of the Mount Zion projects that was going on there. That was a few years ago, too, but I know that you've been going back throughout the years. Can you share about the passion that you have for archaeology and maybe how you landed where you are today? Maybe tell the people where you're studying today as well.
Yeah, so I was introduced to archaeology, what was that, probably 15 years ago, and fell in love with it, and started volunteering on a dig, worked my way up to being a staff member, and decided I needed to study it, so I went to school. And I've been working on my bachelor's and then master's degrees, and now I am at Ariel University in Israel, and I'm working on my PhD. So I'm part of the Shiloh excavation. That's our most recent project that we've been working on. But yes, as you mentioned, I've worked on a few other digs as well.
Yeah, I've been following, I follow you on social media. I follow you. You have a fantastic blog that I like to keep up with that you post on social media as well. Maybe we'll give our listeners a way that they can connect with you through that later on. But I'm interested, what is it about archaeology that you love so much? I saw it happen. I think I saw the moment happen when it clicked in your brain. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But what is it about archaeology that you love?
It's the historical connection, and I love, history in general, but especially biblical history, because, you read it in the Bible, and, it's part of my faith, and you can actually just go and dig it up and find it. And it is just so super cool.
It is very cool, especially the things that you've been finding. What were, before we get to, you're on the Shiloh project right now. Can you share a bit about what's going on the Shiloh project, why that's important for you to be there and to be a part of this dig?
Sure. So Shiloh is a biblical city. It's where the Israelites, when they first came into the land, they, of course, conquered Jericho and they have this conquest, and then they go to Shiloh and they set up the tabernacle there, and it becomes their religious center. And so it's an important biblical site. There's been some excavations there in the past, and we are working. Nobody has actually found for sure where the tabernacle actually sat at the site. There's a few different ideas. But we would sure love to find that spot. How
would you find that spot? What are you looking for? Is that the goal of the Shiloh project, is to isolate maybe where the tabernacle would have been? And what are you looking for as you're digging around in that area?
Right. So it is one of our goals. And it's hard to say what we would find. The tabernacle, of course, is a tent, so we're not going to find the tabernacle. It's not there anymore. But there's some debate about whether they actually erected a more permanent structure. There's some terminology that suggests that there were some, maybe not a whole building, but maybe some walls, foundations. So we might find some structure, and we might find religious objects, like maybe parts of an altar or we found, for example, a ceramic pomegranate, and we know that the pomegranate is a symbol of Judaism and religion. If you remember, the priests had pomegranates hanging from their robes. Solomon decorated the temple with pomegranates.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an example of one thing that we found that's probably associated with the Israelites being there.
Do you think over time too, when you're finding the pomegranates, are you thinking that goes back to that time, or do you think people might have been going there over the years because of the religious significance of it, Jewish people throughout the centuries, because of what the scriptures had said about Shiloh? How does that fit into the story there?
So the pomegranate we found actually does date to the Israelite period while they were there. So it's not one of the pomegranates from the priest's robe, but it is from that time period. But you're right, the site has been venerated over the years, although for a while in the Middle Ages they lost it and they thought Shiloh was somewhere else, but eventually they found it again.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Tell me, so you're on the Shiloh project. What has been one of your favorite digs to do? And you've gone over for I think you said 15 years. And I remember when I first met you, I think you went back a year later and started doing a dig. You and I met in Israel, and then a year later you were doing a dig, and then I'd see you again a year later doing a dig. So you've been a part of a lot of archaeological projects in Israel. What's been kind of the one that you remember most fondly?
They've all been fun, but I ended up doing my master's degree on the Mount Ebal site. So right now that one has a sort of special place in my heart. We actually haven't excavated there, but we did sift there, and maybe we'll talk about it a little bit. But we took, because the site had been excavated, so we took the dump piles, the discarded material from that excavation, and we used wet sifting to sift through it again and find what the excavators had missed in those piles.
Okay, so yeah, we're going to get to that in a minute. I'm excited to hear all about that. I do want to know, though, you said you did your master's degree, and now you're getting your PhD from REL University. Did you already pick out what your dissertation is going to be on, or
Yes.
is that coming? What, can you share about that?
Yeah, so I want to focus on the transition from the late Bronze Age to the early Iron Age in the Central Hill Country. We know that this is a area where the early Israelites settled, and this is that time period. There's some debate about the date when the Israelites arrived. So I wanted to really study that transitional period and see what the archaeology has to say.
Yeah, because this becomes an interesting debate in archaeology, because it really comes down to, you read some Israeli archaeologists and they say the scriptures have nothing to do with archaeology. There's a lot of mythology. And then you have others who I'm assuming is more like you, who go, no, we can use the scriptures as a tool to guide us through archaeology in many ways. Where do you land on that, and how do you explain it to somebody who might be new to archaeology, the different types of debates that go on in these discussions?
Sure, and it is a complex issue. So as a Christian, as a believer, I believe the Bible's true. I think it's inspired by God. As an archaeologist, I want to be a good archaeologist. I want to look at what I find in the dirt and see what it has to say. And, because I believe the Bible, I think what I find is going to line up with the Bible. But, I want to be a good archaeologist and look at it that way. But the fact is, even the most non-religious archaeologist comes at it from a certain viewpoint. Everybody has their paradigm of how they think things work, and they operate within that paradigm. So there's really nobody who's truly unbiased. Everybody's operating within a paradigm. And so, yeah, mine is a faith in the Bible paradigm, but I still try to do archaeology the right way.
Okay, so faith in the Bible paradigm, I love that mentality that you have. And again, you want to do your job well. You don't want your presuppositions to drive everything, as you're saying, but you do believe in the Bible. And so that does, like you say, it creates the world in which you're looking at the archaeology. But that's why this one find that you've been a part of that's made international news is very important to our faith in the scriptures, I would say. Abigail's been a part of can I just read really quick your blog post that you put out not too long ago? I love the way you started your blog post. You said, "I've been keeping a secret for 2 years." I love this. I don't know. My wife doesn't trust me with secrets. You know, if there's a surprise birthday party coming up, she doesn't tell me because she doesn't want me to ruin it. You know, so for 2 years you kept a secret. Good for you. But now the news is out, so I can finally spill the beans, you say. In December of 2019, I was a part of a team that wet sifted the dump piles from the archaeological excavations at Mount Ebal. So why don't if you've been keeping up with the news, if you're listening right now and you've seen on social media or maybe you've read in the news, an ancient tablet was found through wet sifting that Abigail was a part of. Abigail, we're seeing all this news come in about this important find because it's some of the oldest Hebrew inscriptions, I think, to date, as you claim. And so I'm interested to know, what is this Mount Ebal curse tablet that you found? What does it mean? And what was it like finding it? I always wonder what that was like too. So I'll let you take it from here.
Okay, so yes, this is a very small tablet, measures 2 centimeters by 2 centimeters. It's a little piece of lead. It was twice as long, but it's folded in half. And it's very well folded. It's stuck. We cannot open it. So when we found it, Frankie Snyder, who has worked for years on the Temple Mount sifting project, she is an expert sifter. And I think by God's grace, she was the one who had it in her tray because somebody else might not have recognized it.
Wow.
And she knew what it was because we know, archaeologically speaking, that there is such a thing as cursed tablets. And a lot of it relates to the pagan Greco-Roman gods. If you didn't like somebody, you would curse them. You would go to the magician and have the magician write a curse on this lead tablet. And you curse your enemies. That's what you do. So, like, we know these from history. And so we knew what it was. Like, she found it. Our dig director, Scott Stripling, was there. I was there. Like, we all recognized it. And we were like, this is awesome. But we kind of assumed that it dated to a later date because they are so common in the Greco-Roman period. So we wanted to open it. We tried to open it, and it's not openable. So then COVID hit, and it sat in our storage place for a year and a half.
Wow.
Because we couldn't get to it because we couldn't travel because of COVID. But we finally got it to a lab in Prague, and they were able to scan it. And they took detailed scans, like cross-section slices of every layer, and they were able to see inside the tablet and reveal the text that is in there. And it turns out that it is a much older text than we had even hoped for. And it actually dates to the period of the conquest. It is a curse. And I think you have it there. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, I do have this. I know it's hard for people to see it, but what I'm looking at here, Abigail, it looks like just a flat, it looks like just a flat piece of, rock almost, but you're saying this is lead. And you're saying there's writing inside of it that you needed special scans to be able to read what were the words inside.
Exactly.
Okay. Because it almost looks like stone, when you're looking at it. It almost looks like stone with some writing on it. How did you know? Was it just the shape of it that kind of gave away that it was a curse tablet?
So, yeah, I think a lot of people would have mistaken it for a stone. One thing that gave it away is the weight, because it is lead, it's heavy. And then we have a metal detectorist on the team, so whenever there's any question, she runs the metal detector over it and can tell us whether it's metal or not.
Wow, that's wild. So you find this. What does this mean when it comes, because God's name is written on it? That's one of the big signs, and it's his name. It's not, we're talking about, the actual Hebrew name for God. So what does this do for archaeology in kind of setting, as you're kind of getting a timeline, a standard timeline of archaeology and where archaeology fits in the scriptures? What does this do to all of that, especially with what's written on the text?
Right. So it's the important thing is that the tablet appears to contain the name of God, the tetragram Yod He Wahe, but it's shortened to 3 letters, which is still an acceptable form of the name. So this is really important because, as far as we know, the Israelites were the only people group that worshipped Yahweh. And so this is almost certainly an Israelite tablet, which in turn puts the Israelites in the land that early. And because there's such a big debate about when the Israelites arrived, and this puts it at the earlier date, which is, if you add up the numbers in the Bible, they would lead you to that earlier date. So this matches the biblical text really nicely. So yeah, it's important. And then another aspect is that because it actually contains the two words for God, the Elohim and Yahweh together, this will make some interesting repercussions for the people who try to separate, and that the Old Testament was written by different authors, and one author preferred Yahweh, the other author preferred Elohim. So finding them both together on this super early text will also be interesting in that discussion as well.
Yeah, that really upsets. That's the Wellhausen perspective, where they'd like to separate a priestly element of the writing of the Old Testament, one that talks about God as Elohim, one that talks about God as Yahweh, that they were all divided up and then kind of mashed together to form the accounts. But that is interesting. I didn't know that about the tablet, that it put it together. So that kind of upsets and causes people to have to rewrite some scholarship. What makes them? How do they date the writing to go back to this time period, and how are they able to do that, Abigail?
So it's based on the alphabetic form of the letters. There aren't a lot of early alphabetic texts, but there are some in Egypt at Saraba el-Khadim, the mines there in Sinai, that are quite early. And then there are some related alphabets, the Phoenician, Canaanite. And so based on they've kind of figured out the evolution of the shapes of the letters. And so that's mainly what they're basing the date on.
I'm interested to know too, what was the curse about? Do we know? We know God's name was on there. Who's cursing who? Why does it matter that it was found on Mount Ebal, the Ebal tablet? There's a curse element to it. Is there any understanding of what that's all about?
Yeah, so when the Israelites first entered the land of Israel, they do a quick initial conquest, Jericho and Ai, and then they go to Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim. And Moses had told them that they needed to say blessings from Mount Gerizim and curses from Mount Ebal. So, and this is a contract between them and God, and it's saying, they're acknowledging God's law. They're saying, if we obey God's law, we get the blessings. If we disobey God's law, we get the curses. And so it's a very legal contract between them and God. And the way I see this tablet is that this is basically a summation of all the chapters that outline all the curses. It's like shortened and condensed and put into a poetic form, but I think it's a contract saying these are the curses that are going to befall us if we disobey God.
And that really, if you think about it, if this goes back to 1200 BC, as you're saying, this means that the Israelites had on their, of course we read it from the scriptures, but we're not finding much archaeological data for this moment in time. So that's why this find is very big, because it's also saying that when they arrived in the land, it's, of course, biblically we're assuming it because we believe the Bible is true. But for the more secular-minded archaeologist or the more skeptical archaeologist, they're carrying that law from Egypt, and now they're in the land and they're holding on to that law. There's that creates an interesting discussion as well among archaeologists, I'm sure.
Right, exactly.
That's so interesting. All right, so this is what I love about our friendship here, Abigail, is that you were a part of a team that found a very important find, this Mount Ebal curse tablet. You found it by wet sifting, on Mount Ebal. And you and I met on a program that we have called Origins, which is here from Friends of Israel, and it's a volunteer program. And I think that was your first time to Israel, and that's when we had a volunteer trip. A part of the volunteer trip to serving Israel and the Jewish people was also going and being a part of a quick fast but fun archaeological dig that was a part of a wet sifting project, a sift project called the Temple Mount Sifting Operation, I believe. And we sifted through Temple Mount dirt. And that was your first exposure to archaeology, I believe. And I'm glad it was with us. I have some pictures of us from a long time ago, not too long ago, of course. But, I loved, when I would go around, Abigail, and watch people go doing this sifting project that we did, this archaeological project together on Origins, I could see on some people the love for archaeology. It was there. And then for others, they'd sift for a little bit and they'd be like, I'm done. They were hoping to find the Ark of the Covenant. They didn't find it and they give up, What is it? I do remember you, though, Abigail. You were persistent. I could see you laser focused. Like, this is it. It clicked. Like, I love this. What was it about that moment 15 years ago when you did your first sifting operation with the Friends of Israel? What was it about that moment that you go, okay, this is it. This is what I want to do?
I just loved it. I was like, this is so awesome. Like, the chance to find things and just, I don't know, playing in the dirt. I like that too. But I remember, I think I tried to convince you just to leave me there. You wouldn't do it.
No, you had to come home with us. That's right. You had to come back. I love, even on your blog, you have pictures of the very first things that you found from that sifting project that we did. And that was a fun one too, because that was dirt that was dug up by the Palestinians on the Temple Mount, who were creating some exit for the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and they just dumped all of this ancient rubble in, I believe, the Kidron Valley or something like that, and they took all that rubble and they brought it up and they created a team of people who were sifting through this dirt, and they found some amazing things sifting through that dirt. And on your first day doing it, I think you found some fun stuff, some pottery shards, and even an ancient nail or something like that.
I think so. Yeah. Maybe a nail and I think I found like a floor tile, which ended up being pretty cool.
Yeah. I did it for several years going back and forth with our Origins trip. And I think at one point I found a coin. At one point, I was not as fortunate as you to, some people were hitting jackpots right away and I was, just sifting through dirt. But one year I did find a coin. It might have even been the last year that I did it. But Abigail,
that's pretty cool.
I would like you, maybe there's some aspiring archaeologists out there. Everybody wants to be an it's fun. You get that image more of Indiana Jones than anything. But tell me about the work involved in being an archaeologist, and what would you say to an aspiring archaeologist right now?
So it is a lot of hard work, and you do dig a lot, and sometimes you find exciting things and sometimes you don't. But I would say that if somebody is interested in archaeology, they should volunteer on a dig, go do it, and just find out whether they like it or not before they commit too much time or effort into it. Definitely worth it to go just dig for a few weeks and see if they like it.
That's amazing. Well, everybody, I want to encourage you. Abigail, how can people follow you on your journeys in Israel as you're doing the Shiloh project right now, as you're digging in Shiloh? How can they follow you and catch up on all the things that you've been doing in Israel?
Like you mentioned, I have a blog. It's Abigail's Archaeological Adventures. I think it's just at WordPress. I don't actually remember. WordPress.com or something like that.
Yep, Abigail's Archaeological Adventures.wordpress.com. Look, I'm your spokesman. And listen, you can also, there is I believe a GoFundMe page or something of that nature to help you out, because you are in Israel. I'm assuming that you're living over there as a student right now. Is that right?
Yes, I'm living in the dorms. Going to school. So
that's great. So you're going to REL University, and can people connect with you through the website, the blog site there? Can they reach out to you if they're interested in finding out more about what you're doing?
Oh, yeah, sure.
That's great. So listen, everybody, go to Abigail's Archaeological Adventures.wordpress.com, And there you can find out about all the fun stuff that Abigail's doing, digging up in the land of Israel, getting her PhD. PhD. I remember her when she was just sifting through dirt with me 15 years ago, and now she's getting her PhD. We couldn't be more proud of Abigail and the work that she's doing, serving the Lord, I think, in a really, really critical time. Abigail, I want to end with this right here, because this is what I love about archaeology. I believe that in a time period, I think God's timing for everything is so perfect. It's his providential timing that, we're entering into a world where the scriptures don't carry the weight that they used to carry. The scriptures are criticized, highly criticized, historically criticized. People don't value the scriptures for what they used to be, maybe from even 50 years ago or 60 years ago. Today, we live in a highly critical world. And you know what? People need to see oftentimes where those pieces connect. I personally believe God's giving us a moment in history where we're able to dig up the land to not only just simply see all the amazing stuff that happened thousands of years ago, but also to verify many of the historical accounts of the Bible. I believe God's timing is providential. I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that archaeology isn't something that we should base our faith on, but it sure is cool when it lines up with the Bible.
Amen. All right, everybody, go to Abigail's archaeologicaladventures.wordpress.com. Catch up on all the things that she's doing. Abigail, thanks for being with us and joining us from Israel. We really appreciate it.
Thanks so much. It's been fun. Nice to see you again.
You too, Abigail. Hey, everybody, listen. We are wrapping up. Be sure to go to foiequip.org to find ways that you can partner with Friends of Israel. Take one of our classes online. It's all done on FOI Equip. Again, foiequip.org. Abigail, thanks a lot. Be sure to visit her website. We'll see you soon.